There are also people that are clinging on to a hope for some kind of reconciliation between mankind and these serpentine aliens that we hear about. This talk will fill in more of the overall picture about just where we stand regards our relationship with them. I just want to start by saying that just because the human-looking types, like the Pleiadians and the Nordics, say they are keeping out of the way due to their policy of non-interference, it does not mean that they are not the biggest deceivers of them all. It was, after all, the Watchers of Enoch's time, Satan's 200 generals, that introduced to mankind everything that our Creator knew was not for our benefit. Big things like certain types of civilization, religion and warfare, right down to seemingly small things like the wearing of jewellery and the painting of faces to make people focus on the self. All of these things ultimately only benefit the ones that gave them to us. Now, does that sound like a friendly or even neutral race of benevolent aliens? Because to me it sounds like a species that's only interested in manipulating us into wars and a life structure that benefits only them and their elite. Mankind has been managed through these serpent bloodlines, families, ever since Babylon, and the only reason some call themselves royal is because they came from the ancient Sumerian serpentine gods that came down in great skyships. It's like the Stargate movie all over again. When people jump on the bandwagon of all wars are caused by religion, they are only partly right, because if it wasn't for the royal families and their feuds throughout history, how many wars do we think we might have really had? The aliens' religions and rituals have caused most of mankind to miss out on a true relationship with our Creator, all in order to deceive us into empowering them instead. False gods, like the tall grey alien called Jesus Sananda, the pale horseman of the apocalypse that poses as Christendom's Messiah, especially in angelic encounters. Todd Bentley's comes to mind. His angelic counter comes to mind because it's my guess that he failed to even test his visiting angel. So of course people like Mr. Bentley and the people that follow him are going to their doom. How about this Lord Maitreya, the black horseman of the apocalypse, that poses as the Arabic and New Age Messiah, that promises nothing but hatred and death as part of the alien depopulation program? Will the New Agers and the Shiite Muslims realise they are being played and manipulated into a war on their fellow man, or are they just too close to the trees to see the forest? Just as before, these so-called aliens will only have the courage to show up openly when the population is vastly reduced and therefore unable to resist any plans they have. In reality, the mankind-looking Nordics and Pleiadians are the biggest fascists of all. I say mankind-looking rather than human-looking because the word human in Welsh means serpent man. It is these nice guys that gave us religion, and especially the New Age movement, which I think is the ultimate Jimmy Jones fan club. They'll be the ones climbing rooftops in order to get closer to the UFOs and their so-called ascended masters, like in the movie Independence Day. Many religions are actively preparing for the return of these false gods, and they even have the same leader that they did back when they were called the Watchers, the fallen angel Samjaza. Many think Samjaza is Lucifer, even though when Samjaza shows up, it's often as a female, at least facially. Many have wondered why the Watchers apparently were able to keep their looks, and maybe they have, maybe they haven't. They are actually, they're certainly not beyond using shapeshifting or holographic technology to disguise themselves. Another surprisingly large group of people are those that do not like to believe that the aliens have one supreme leader. Some people just have a really hard time accepting that the once most favoured archangel, then called Lucifer, is the same great serpent, the same great dragon, or draconian, that led a third of the angels into rebellion, and still rules them today. One thing is guaranteed, and that is that he has not handed the reins of ultimate power over to a council of 13. Lucy is not equal to anyone or anything else in his kingdom. Of all the evil in this universe, only he still has access to the throne room of the Creator himself. There may indeed be internal squabbles between the varying factions due to competitiveness, but every faction has the same goal, which is to be the ones in power when he comes here to reign in person for the last 3.5 years of great tribulation. The people this subject should speak to most, though, are those people that have had a hard time accepting that every one of these serpent races actually eat people. Scripture says that this is not just because they can, but because they have to, and that they have had to ever since the Garden of Eden incident. Okay, so just what is the dust exactly that the serpents are being cursed by God to have to eat for the rest of their lives? The dust is us. Mankind is that very dust that they are forced to eat, and that is the information given out on that elusive website. By using, for instance, the online Blue Letter Bible and its search facility, we can easily find all Bible verses that have the word dust in them. Some of them are not relevant, but many inform us just exactly what the dust is that the serpents have to eat. Verses like, "For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." In the concordance, the word dust is aphar, number 06083, and it means dry earth, dust, powder, ashes, earth, ground, mortar, and rubbish. Genesis 18:27, "And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes." Exodus 8:17, "For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod, and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast, and all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt." Numbers 5:17, "And the priest shall take holy water and an earthen vessel, and of the dust that is in the floor of the tabernacle the priest shall take and put into the water." I think this was done in remembrance of just what the ingredients are that make up mankind. The holy water represents the spirit breath, but here the earthen vessel represents our physical bodies, and the dust represents the soul. Even more interesting, then, become verses that talk of the soul being in the blood. Each of these three parts is vital for the creation of man, and that's why Satan's kingdom will never be able to duplicate us. The closest they can get is making hybrids versus through methods like abduction and rape, so they can have flesh robots running errands for them, like scientists pretending they actually invented something when it was given to them via programming for the Black Ops projects. Some people have their souls taken out of their bodies via advanced technology and literally boxed. That's soul scalping. That's basically going to feel like the biblical Tartarus, Hades, or Purgatory. Although Purgatory is not biblical, actually. The spirit prison for bad people, where they go, apparently, to await Judgment Day. A similar example of this boxing is in the TV series Battlestar Galactica. Here are some verses that indicate that mankind is that very dust again. Numbers 23:10. "Who can count the dust of Jacob?" Job 30:19. "He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes." Psalms 103:14. "For he knoweth our frame, he remembereth that we are dust." Isaiah 34:7. "And the unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness." Basically, their bodies will be made fat. Zephaniah 1:17b. "And their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung." Perhaps these all link to the reason for the dust and ashes people used to put over their heads when repenting, and it's likely also linked to this instructional verse, Matthew 10:14. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor